The void between stars held many secrets, but Commander Vextal had seen most of them during his 40 cycles of service with the Zelkari Empire. His sleek vessel, the Harmony of Minds, drifted silently through the darkness at the edge of what the star charts marked as unexplored space. The ship's bioluminescent hull pulsed with a gentle blue rhythm that matched his heartbeat, a design feature that helped maintain crew morale during long reconnaissance missions. Vextal's 4 eyes studied the tactical display with practiced ease. His species had mapped 70% of this galaxy arm, cataloging thousands of worlds and dozens of intelligent species. Most followed predictable patterns once they achieved spaceflight. They built efficient ships, established trade routes, and eventually joined the Galactic Cooperative under Zelkari guidance. It was a peaceful process that had worked for 3,000 years. The sensor officer, a young female named Zithara, suddenly stiffened at her console. Her tentacles moved rapidly across the bioneural interface, sending ripples of orange concern through her skin. "Commander, we have an unknown contact," she announced, her voice carrying the melodic tones typical of her caste, bearing 27 Mark IV, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. Vextal's own skin shifted to a more alert green hue. Unknown contacts were rare in mapped space, and they were definitely beyond the frontier here. Classification? Artificial construct, definitely a vessel of some kind, Zithara replied, her tentacles dancing across the controls. The signature is unlike anything in our databases. The energy output suggests primitive fusion drives, but the mass readings are unusual. The main screen shimmered to life, displaying a long-range visual of the contact. Vextal's breath caught in his throat. The ship before them was a brutal thing of metal and sharp angles, painted in aggressive grays and blacks. Where Zelkari vessels flowed like living creatures, this one looked like it had been carved from a single block of iron by someone who had never heard of aesthetics. "Magnify," he ordered. The image expanded, revealing more disturbing details. The hull was covered in what appeared to be weapon systems, not the elegant energy projectors favored by civilized species, but crude metal tubes that suggested kinetic projectiles. Armor plating covered every surface in overlapping layers, and strange protrusions jutted from the hull at irregular intervals. "By the ancient currents," whispered Dr. Nethiara from her science station. "What manner of species build such a thing?" Vextal studied the alien ship with growing unease. In his experience, a species' starships reflected their nature. The Zelkari built ships that promoted harmony and mental well-being. The Thaxians created vessels that celebrated their artistic traditions. The Corvin designed practical, efficient craft that matched their logical mindset. This ship spoke of violence and paranoia. Its creators expected to fight, and they expected to take damage while doing it. "Run a passive scan," Vextal ordered. "I want to know everything about that vessel without alerting them to our presence." "Already in progress, Commander," Dr. Nethera replied, her 6 arms working multiple control surfaces simultaneously. Initial readings show a crew of approximately 300 biological entities. The life signs are curious. They appear to be carbon-based, but the neural activity patterns are unlike anything in our xenobiology databases. Zithara's skin flashed yellow with excitement. "Commander, I'm detecting communication signals from the vessel. The transmission methods are primitive electromagnetic radiation, but I'm beginning to decode the language patterns." "What do they call themselves?" Vextal asked. "The ship identifier translates roughly to USS Defiance, and the species refers to itself as human," Zithara reported. "They appear to use verbal communication primarily, with written symbols as backup. The language structure suggests high intelligence despite the primitive technology." Dr. Nethara's tentacles curled with concern as more data flowed across her screens. "Commander, the deep scans are revealing troubling information about their technology. They use controlled explosions for propulsion, chemical reactions for life support, and their computers appear to be based on primitive electronic circuits rather than bioneural networks. How do they achieve faster-than-light travel with such limitations?" Vextal wondered aloud. "That's the disturbing part," the science officer replied. "They don't. This vessel appears to have traveled here using conventional thrust over what must have been decades or possibly centuries. The crew shows signs of extended hibernation cycles, and there are generational living quarters suggesting multiple lifespans aboard the vessel." The implications hit Vextal like a physical blow. These humans had sent a ship on a journey that would outlast the lives of its builders. trusting future generations to complete the mission. It spoke of a planning capability and dedication that bordered on the obsessive. "Continue the scans," he ordered. "I want to understand these creatures before we make contact." The harmony of minds maintained its distance while its advanced sensors picked apart every detail of the human ship. What they found defied conventional wisdom about spacefaring species. The USS Defiance was built like a fortress with multiple redundant systems and armor thick enough to stop meteor impacts. Every component was designed to be manually operated if the automated systems failed. "Commander," Dr. Nathara said, her voice tight with concern, "I've identified the crew leader. The humans call him Captain Jake Morrison. The biological scans show he's typical of their species, but the psychological profile is unsettling." "In what way?" "His brain chemistry shows constant low-level stress responses, as if he's perpetually prepared for combat. More concerning, this appears to be normal for their species. Every crew member shows similar patterns." Vextel's skin shifted to a deeper green as he processed this information. The Zelkari had encountered aggressive species before, but they typically displayed territorial behavior in response to threats. These humans seemed to carry the potential for violence as a baseline state. "What about their cultural development?" he asked. Sithara looked up from her communication analysis, her tentacles pale with shock. "Commander, their data transmissions include historical records. These beings have been in continuous conflict for their entire recorded history. They've developed thousands of different ways to kill each other, many of which seem designed to cause maximum suffering rather than efficient elimination." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zelkari had built their empire on the principle that all intelligent life naturally evolved toward cooperation and peace. Violence was a primitive response that disappeared as species matured, yet here was evidence of a species that had achieved spaceflight, while retaining what could only be described as a pathological relationship with warfare. Dr. Nathara's voice broke the silence. "Commander, there's something else. The ship's records indicate this is not a military exploration vessel. According to their classifications, this is a light cruiser with standard armament crewed by Academy graduates on their first deep space assignment." The blood in Vextal's circulatory system seemed to slow. If this nightmare of metal and weapons represented the humans' idea of a lightly armed training vessel, what horrors did their actual military deploy? "Begin detailed analysis of all systems," he ordered, his voice steady despite his growing concern. "We need to understand everything about these humans before we decide how to proceed." The scanner arrays hummed with increased activity as they focused their attention on the USS Defiance. Deep in the quantum resonance chambers, subatomic particles began mapping every circuit, every weapon, every biological entity aboard the human ship. What they would find would change the Zelkari Empire forever. The quantum scanners had been running for 6 hours, and Dr. Nathara found herself wishing they would malfunction. Each new piece of data about the humans made her more uncomfortable than the last. Her 6 arms moved across multiple workstations as she compiled psychological profiles from the extracted information, and what she discovered challenged everything the Zelkari understood about intelligent life. "Commander Vextal," she called softly, her skin displaying muted patterns of distress. "I have completed the preliminary analysis of the crew's mental patterns and historical databases." Vextal approached her station, noting the unusual tension in her posture. Dr. Nathara was the Empire's leading xenopsychologist, having studied dozens of species during their integration into the cooperative. She had never appeared this disturbed by her findings. "What troubles you, Doctor?" "These humans," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are fundamentally different from every species we have encountered. Their psychological baseline includes what we would classify as severe mental disorders in any civilized being." The main display shifted to show brain scan comparisons. Human neural patterns appeared alongside those of known species, the differences stark and troubling. Where other intelligence showed calm, organized thought processes, the human brains blazed with constant activity in regions associated with threat assessment and survival planning. "Look at this individual," Dr. Nathara said, highlighting one particular scan. "Science Officer Lisa Parker, age 28 Earth years." Her personal logs reveal what they call normal behavior patterns. The translated text scrolled across secondary screens, and Vextal read with growing alarm. Parker's casual entries described preparation for scenarios that would terrify most species. She regularly practiced what humans called combat medicine, learning to treat injuries while under simulated attack. Her daily routine included physical conditioning designed to prepare her body for violent encounters. She writes about these activities as if they were pleasant hobbies, Dr. Nithara observed. Humans actually enjoy training for violence. They find satisfaction in becoming more efficient at causing harm. Zithara looked up from her communication station, her tentacles pale with shock. Doctor, you need to see the historical databases I've extracted. The humans have maintained detailed records of their conflicts, and the scope is beyond anything we imagined possible. New data flooded the displays, showing timeline after timeline of human warfare. Vextal's 4 eyes tracked the information with mounting horror. The humans had never experienced a single generation without some form of organized violence. Their history was an unbroken chain of conflicts, each more devastating than the last. They call it the 30 Years' War, Zithara reported, highlighting one particular conflict. 30 Earth years of continuous fighting that destroyed entire regions of their world. And they have dozens of similar conflicts in their records. Dr. Nithara pulled up additional files, her movements becoming more agitated. Look at their weapons development. They created something called chemical warfare, specifically designed to cause prolonged suffering before death. Then they invented biological weapons that could kill entire populations. And finally, they developed nuclear weapons capable of rendering entire continents uninhabitable. The bridge fell silent as the implications became clear. The Zelkari had assumed that any species capable of reaching space would have evolved beyond such primitive violence. The galactic norm was for civilizations to abandon warfare as they developed technology, recognizing cooperation as more efficient than conflict. Commander, Dr. Nithara continued, her voice strained. These weapons were not created for defense against external threats. The humans built them to use against other humans. They have spent thousands of years perfecting ways to kill their own species. Vextal studied the tactical assessments with growing unease. Human military doctrine was unlike anything in Zelkari databases. Where civilized species focused on decisive victories with minimal casualties, humans had developed concepts like total war and mutually assured destruction. They planned for conflicts that would destroy both sides rather than accept defeat. This cannot be accurate, he said, though his skin betrayed his doubt with shifting patterns of fear. No intelligent species would deliberately choose mutual extinction over surrender. The records are quite clear, Zithara replied, pulling up military manuals from the human databases. They have something called doomsday protocols that ensure even a losing side can inflict catastrophic damage on the victor. Every human military unit is trained to continue fighting, even when victory becomes impossible. Dr. Nithara highlighted another disturbing aspect of human psychology. Commander, observe their approach to leadership in combat situations. This Captain Morrison has been trained to make decisions that will result in the deaths of his own crew members if necessary to complete the mission. The personal files of Jake. Morrison revealed a mind shaped by concepts foreign to Zelkari thinking. He had been taught to weigh the lives of his crew against abstract strategic objectives, to sacrifice individuals for larger goals, and to accept responsibility for sending people to their deaths. More troubling, he appeared to function normally despite carrying this psychological burden. How do they maintain social cohesion with such violent tendencies? Vextal asked. That may be the most disturbing aspect, Dr. Nithara replied, calling up sociological data. They have created what they call military culture, that transforms individual violence into collective purpose. They take beings who would be considered dangerously unstable in any civilized society and organize them into coordinated fighting units. The communications officer, Zithara, had been monitoring human transmissions during the analysis. Her report added another layer of concern to their growing understanding. Commander, I have been analyzing their current mission parameters, she said. The USS Defiance is on what they call a deep space exploration mission, but their definition of exploration includes detailed mapping of potential military targets and resource extraction sites. They are scouting for future conquest? Vextal asked. Worse, Zithara replied. They appear to be scouting for future conflicts. Their exploration protocols assume they will eventually fight whatever they encounter. They are not seeking friends or trading partners. They are identifying future enemies and planning how to defeat them. Dr. Nathara pulled up the most disturbing file yet, the service record of Chief Engineer Ben Collins. This individual has experience with what humans call asymmetric warfare. When faced with technologically superior opponents, they develop tactics specifically designed to negate advantages through unconventional methods. The file detailed conflicts where technologically inferior human forces had defeated superior enemies through tactics that civilized species would consider unthinkable. Humans used deception, sabotage, and targeted attacks on civilian infrastructure. They showed no respect for the conventions that made warfare bearable for other species. They fight without honor, Vextal observed. They fight to win, Dr. Nathara corrected. Honor, mercy, and civilized conduct are secondary considerations at best. When humans engage in warfare, their only objective is the complete defeat of their opponent by any means necessary. The quantum scanners continued their work, extracting deeper levels of information from the human vessel. Each new discovery reinforced the growing picture of a species that had evolved not just intelligence, but a form of intelligence specifically adapted for conflict and survival in hostile environments. Vextal realized that the Zelkari Empire faced something unprecedented in their history. Every previous contact with intelligent life had followed predictable patterns leading to peaceful integration. The humans represented something entirely different, a species that had developed intelligence while retaining and enhancing their capacity for organized violence. Continue the analysis, he ordered, though part of him wished they could simply retreat and pretend this encounter had never happened. We need to understand the full scope of what we are dealing with. The implications were becoming clear and they were terrifying. The galaxy was about to meet a species that treated warfare as a science and violence as a tool of diplomacy. The scanning arrays had been running for 12 hours when they penetrated the deepest archives of the human ship. Dr. Nathara found herself staring at data that made no sense according to everything. The Zelkari knew about planetary development and evolution. Her tentacles trembled as she processed the environmental records of the human homeworld, a place they called Earth. Commander Vextal, she called, her voice tight with disbelief. You need to see this immediately. Vextal approached her station, noting that her skin had shifted to the pale gray color that indicated severe distress among her species. In 40 years of service, he had never seen Dr. Nathara display such obvious fear. What have you discovered, Doctor? The human homeworld, she began, her voice barely steady. It should not support complex life. According to our classification system, Earth registers as a Class 12 death world. The main display shifted to show the environmental data extracted from the human archives. Vextal's 4 eyes studied the readings with growing horror. The atmospheric composition alone should have prevented the evolution of complex organisms, oxygen levels that would be toxic to most galactic species, atmospheric pressure variations that could crush or explode unprotected beings, and temperature ranges that spanned from freezing to boiling across the planetary surface. This cannot be accurate, Vextal said, though his own skin was beginning to show stress patterns. No world this hostile could produce intelligent life. The records are extensive and consistent, Dr. Nathara replied, pulling up additional files. Environmental Officer Amy Rodriguez has compiled detailed reports on Earth's climate systems. Commander, their weather alone would qualify as a planetary weapon by our standards. The display showed meteorological phenomena that defied belief. Rotating wind systems called hurricanes that could level cities. Electrical storms that discharged enough energy to power Zelkari vessels. And temperature variations so extreme they could kill exposed beings in minutes. The humans had given casual names to these deadly forces, as if they were minor inconveniences rather than extinction-level threats. Look at this, Dr. Nathara continued, highlighting geological data. Their planet experiences regular tectonic activity that reshapes entire continents. Volcanic eruptions that can alter global climate for years. Earthquakes that split the ground open, and massive waves that can travel across entire oceans to destroy coastal regions. Zithara looked up from her communications station, her tentacles pale with shock. Doctor, I have been analyzing their historical records. Earth has experienced multiple mass extinction events that eliminated most life on the planet. Yet somehow life always returned and became more complex than before. The implications were staggering. The Zelkari homeworld was a garden paradise where the most dangerous weather involved gentle rain showers. Most civilized species evolved on similarly stable worlds, where environmental pressures encouraged cooperation and peaceful development. Earth appeared to be the opposite, a world that constantly tested its inhabitants with lethal challenges. How did they survive? Vextel asked. Dr. Nethara pulled up biological analysis data that made her skin shift to an even paler shade. That may be the most disturbing aspect, Commander. The humans are not just survivors of this hostile environment. They are products of it. Every aspect of their biology reflects adaptation to a world trying to kill them. The biological scans revealed creatures that seemed designed by a mad scientist. Human physiology included redundant systems for every major function, pain responses that allowed them to continue functioning despite severe injuries, and immune systems capable of fighting off diseases that would kill most galactic species within hours. Look at their cardiovascular system, Dr. Nethara said, highlighting medical data from the ship's archives. They have what they call an adrenaline response that temporarily increases their physical capabilities when faced with danger. Under stress, humans become faster, stronger, and more resistant to pain. They become more dangerous when threatened? Vextel asked. Significantly more dangerous, the doctor confirmed. Their stress response system is designed to help them fight or flee from predators that could kill them instantly. The interesting aspect is that this response activates not just for physical threats, but for any situation they perceive as challenging. Sithara had been studying human recreational activities, and her findings added another layer of horror to their understanding. Commander, the humans engage in activities they call extreme sports for entertainment. They deliberately place themselves in life-threatening situations for pleasure. The display showed records of humans jumping from aircraft without propulsion systems, descending dangerous mountain faces with minimal equipment, and racing vehicles at speeds that would be fatal if they lost control. More disturbing, they appeared to enjoy these activities specifically because of the danger involved. They seek out mortal peril as a form of recreation? Vextel asked. It appears that humans require a certain level of danger to feel satisfied with their existence, Dr. Nethara explained. Their psychology is adapted to a world where constant vigilance was necessary for survival. In the absence of natural threats, they create artificial ones. The environmental data continued to reveal new horrors. Earth's biosphere included predators that actively hunted humans, diseases that could kill entire populations, and plant life that was toxic to touch. The humans had not just survived in this environment, they had conquered it and then left it to seek out new challenges among the stars. Doctor, Sithara called from her station, I have found something called persistence hunting in their behavioral records. Dr. Nethara accessed the file and her tentacles curled in revulsion. Commander, this explains their psychology. Humans evolved as persistence predators. They would chase prey across vast distances until the target collapsed from exhaustion. They are literally evolved to never give up pursuit of something they want. The hunting records showed a species that had developed the ability to track targets for days or weeks, wearing down faster and stronger prey through sheer determination. Humans could run for hours without stopping, regulate their body temperature through a unique cooling system, and maintain pursuit even when injured or exhausted. They are pursuit predators, Vextel said, the words heavy with implication. Once they identify a target, they will follow it until either they or their prey dies. The behavioral pattern extends beyond hunting, Dr. Nethara added. Human military doctrine includes something called total war, where they commit to conflicts with no possibility of retreat or compromise. They approach warfare with the same persistence they once used to hunt prey animals. The biological analysis revealed even more disturbing adaptations. Humans could survive injuries that would prove fatal to most species, function with significant blood loss, and continue fighting even when their bodies began shutting down. Their pain tolerance was beyond anything in Zelkari medical knowledge. Look at this combat medical report, Dr. Nethara said, displaying data from the ship's medical files. Humans have been known to continue fighting with broken bones, internal bleeding, and severe burns. Their physiology includes mechanisms that prevent them from losing consciousness until their body completely fails. Combat engineer Rachel Stone's medical records provided a perfect example. She had once completed a mission while suffering from injuries that should have incapacitated her, driven by what the humans called duty and determination. Her ability to function despite severe trauma was considered normal by human standards. They are walking weapons, Vextal observed. Biological entities evolve specifically to survive and kill in the most hostile environment imaginable. The quantum scanners continued extracting data, revealing more about human adaptation to their death world origin. Every aspect of their society reflected the harsh realities of their evolution. They had developed technology not to make life easier, but to give them advantages in their endless struggle against environmental and biological threats. Dr. Nethara compiled her findings with growing dread. The humans were not just another species seeking their place among the stars. They were apex predators from a world that specialized in creating apex predators, and they were now loose in a galaxy populated by species that had never faced anything like them. The deep psychological analysis had been running for 18 hours when Dr. Nethara discovered something that made her question everything she understood about intelligent behavior. Her 6 arms worked frantically across multiple interfaces as she processed the emotional and social data extracted from the human crew's personal files. What she found challenged the very foundation of galactic psychology. "Commander Vextal," she called, her voice carrying a tremor that made the bridge crew turn in alarm. "I have identified what may be the most dangerous aspect of human psychology." Vextal approached her station with growing dread. Each revelation about the humans had been worse than the last, and Dr. Nethara's expression suggested this discovery surpassed all previous findings in its implications for galactic security. "What have you found, Doctor?" "The humans possess something they call pack bonding behavior," she began, her tentacles displaying rapid patterns of distress. "It appears to be an evolutionary adaptation that turns their predatory instincts into protective behaviors for anything they consider part of their group." The main display shifted to show communication logs from the human ship. Personal messages between crew members revealed emotional attachments that went far beyond the professional relationships typical of other species. These humans expressed genuine affection for their colleagues, their ship, and even abstract concepts like duty and honor. "Observe this individual," Dr. Nethara said, highlighting the files of Communications Officer Steve Burton. His personal messages to his family reveal the terrifying scope of human emotional attachment. The translated text scrolled across the screen, and Vextal read with mounting alarm. Burton wrote about his crewmates as if they were genetic relatives, describing a willingness to sacrifice his own life to protect people he had known for only a few years. More disturbing, this appeared to be normal behavior rather than an aberration. "He refers to the ship itself as if it were a living being," Dr. Nethara observed. "Look at this passage where he describes USS Defiance as home and expresses emotional attachment to an inanimate object made of metal and circuits." Zithara looked up from her analysis of human cultural databases, her skin pale with shock. "Doctor, the pack bonding extends far beyond their immediate crew. I have found records of humans forming protective relationships with other species, including some they initially encountered as enemies." New data flooded the screens, showing historical accounts of human behavior during first contact situations. Instead of the careful diplomatic protocols used by civilized species, humans had a disturbing tendency to either fight newcomers or immediately attempt to integrate them into their social groups. "They have something called adoption," Zithara continued. "Humans will take individuals from other species and treat them as if they were human offspring, providing protection and resources with no expectation of genetic benefit." Dr. Nethara pulled up military records that illustrated the terrifying implications of human pack bonding in combat situations. "Commander, look at these incident reports. When humans believe their pack members are threatened, their behavior becomes completely irrational by any civilized standard." The files detailed conflicts where human military units had refused evacuation orders to search for missing comrades, launched suicidal rescue missions for single individuals, and declared total war against entire civilizations for harming their adopted family members. The concept of acceptable losses, fundamental to rational military planning, appeared to be meaningless to humans when applied to anyone they considered part of their pack. "This cannot be accurate," Vextal said, though his skin betrayed his growing fear. "No intelligent species would risk everything for the sake of individuals with no genetic relationship." "The records are extensive and consistent," Dr. Nethara replied. Accessing deeper psychological files, combat psychologist Dr. Karen Hayes has compiled detailed studies on human pack bonding behavior. According to her research, humans form emotional attachments as a survival mechanism. But the scope has expanded far beyond its original evolutionary purpose. The analysis revealed that humans would pack bond with virtually anything given sufficient time and interaction. They formed protective relationships with pets, vehicles, geographical locations, and even abstract concepts like freedom and justice. Once these bonds were established, humans would fight to defend them with the same ferocity they showed when protecting their genetic offspring. Look at these casualty reports from human military history, Dr. Nathara said, displaying data that made her tentacles curl in horror. When humans believe their pack is threatened, they become capable of violence that exceeds anything we have seen from other species. The files showed conflicts where humans had fought impossible odds rather than abandoned territory they considered home, launched devastating counterattacks in response to attacks on their civilians, and pursued enemies across vast distances to exact revenge for harm done to their pack members. The idea of proportional response was foreign to human thinking when it came to protecting what they loved. Navigator Tony Clark's personal logs provided another disturbing insight into human pack bonding. His star charts were annotated with emotional commentary about human colonies, each one described as if it were a beloved family member rather than a strategic asset. He writes about these settlements as if they were his children, Dr. Nathara observed. Each colony represents another family member that humans will fight to protect, another point of vulnerability that enemies could exploit to trigger their protective instincts. Zithara had been analyzing human expansion patterns, and her findings added a terrifying dimension to their understanding of pack bonding behavior. Commander, the humans are already spreading across multiple star systems. Based on their colonization rate and pack bonding tendencies, they will soon consider vast regions of space to be their territory. The implications were staggering. Each human settlement became another trigger point for their protective instincts. As they expanded across the galaxy, they would form emotional attachments to every world they touched, every species they encountered, and every abstract principle they valued. Any threat to these attachments would trigger their predatory combat instincts. They do not just fight for resources or strategic advantage, Vextal realized. They fight for love. And there is nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than a human protecting something they love, Dr. Nathara confirmed. Their pack bonding behavior transforms their individual survival instincts into collective protective drives that ignore rational, cost-benefit analysis. The psychological profiles revealed even more disturbing aspects of human pack bonding. Humans would extend their protective instincts to include concepts and ideals, fighting wars to defend abstract principles like democracy, freedom, and human rights. They were capable of declaring eternal enmity against anyone who threatened their adopted values. Look at this historical conflict, Dr. Nathara said, displaying records of human wars fought over ideological differences. They engaged in decades of warfare not over territory or resources, but over different opinions about how society should be organized. Medical officer Karen Hayes' research files provided the most chilling insight yet. Her studies showed that humans who had lost their pack bonds often became completely unpredictable, either withdrawing from all social contact or lashing out with unprecedented violence against anything they perceived as a threat to potential future bonds. They become more dangerous when isolated, Dr. Nathara explained. A human who has lost their pack will either form new bonds with incredible speed or attempt to destroy anything that might prevent them from doing so. The quantum scanners continued extracting data about human social behavior, revealing a species that had evolved complex emotional mechanisms to support group survival in their hostile environment. But those same mechanisms had created beings capable of extending unlimited loyalty and protection to anyone or anything they adopted into their pack. Commander, Zithara called from her station, I have detected changes in the human ship's behavior. They appear to have noticed our scanning attempts. Vextal felt his blood chill as he realized the implications. The humans knew they were being observed, and according to everything they had learned about pack bonding behavior, first contact would likely result in the humans attempting to adopt the Zelkari into their protective social structure. What are they doing? He asked. Captain Morrison is ordering a course change toward our position. Sithara reported. They are transmitting what appear to be peaceful greetings in multiple languages. Dr. Nethara's tentacles curled in terror as she processed this information. Commander, if the humans successfully establish social contact with us, they may attempt to pact bond with our crew. Based on their psychological profiles, they will then consider any threat to the Zelkari Empire as a personal attack on their adopted family. The horrifying realization struck Vextal like a physical blow. The humans were not just predators seeking new hunting grounds. They were seeking new family members to protect, and their definition of protection included unlimited violence against any perceived threat. Contact with humanity might transform the peaceful Zelkari into another trigger point for human warfare. Another beloved posse. The final phase of scanning had been completed, and Commander Vextal found himself staring at a comprehensive analysis that would change the course of galactic history. 24 hours of deep quantum analysis had revealed the full scope of what the Zelkari Empire faced, and the implications were beyond anything their civilization had prepared for. Dr. Nethara and her team had compiled their findings into a report that read like a nightmare scenario designed to test the limits of rational thought. Commander, Dr. Nethara said, her voice barely steady as she approached his command station. The analysis is complete. We now understand what these humans represent, and I must advise immediate withdrawal from this system. Vextal studied the final report with growing dread. Every aspect of human psychology, biology, and culture had been dissected and analyzed, revealing a species that defied every established model of intelligent development. The humans were not just another primitive civilization waiting to be uplifted into galactic society. They were something entirely different, something that threatened the very foundations of the peaceful order the Zelkari had spent millennia building. Summarize your findings, Doctor. The humans are an extinction-level threat to every established civilization in the galaxy, she replied without hesitation. They represent chaos incarnate, wrapped in just enough technological sophistication to operate starships and weapons of mass destruction. The main display showed a comprehensive threat assessment that made Vextal's skin shift to the pale gray of mortal terror. Human expansion patterns, reproduction rates, and technological development curves painted a picture of inevitable galactic dominance within a few centuries. More terrifying, their psychological profiles suggested they would not be content with simple conquest. They reproduce at rates that exceed every known intelligent species. Dr. Nethara continued. Their life cycles are short but incredibly productive, allowing rapid population growth and fast adaptation to new environments. A single human generation can colonize dozens of worlds. Sithara looked up from her analysis station, her tentacles displaying patterns of despair. Commander, I have been studying their expansion patterns. The humans do not follow rational colonization strategies. They settle worlds that other species would consider uninhabitable, turning every environment they encounter into another point they will defend with unlimited violence. The colonization data revealed a species that treated hostile environments as challenges to overcome rather than obstacles to avoid. Humans had established settlements on worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and deadly native life forms. Each colony became another family member in their ever-expanding pack, another trigger point for their protective instincts. Look at this analysis of their technological development, Dr. Nethara said, displaying engineering assessments of human equipment. The USS Defiance represents their basic technology level, yet it incorporates design principles that are fundamentally different from every civilized species. The human ship had been built with the assumption that it would face superior enemies and take massive damage while continuing to function. Every system included manual overrides. Every component was designed for field repair under combat conditions, and the entire vessel could operate effectively even when 80% destroyed. This is not their most advanced technology, Dr. Nethara emphasized. According to their own classifications, this is a training vessel for inexperienced crew members. If this represents their baseline capability, what horrors does their primary fleet deploy? Combat engineer Rachel Stone's technical manuals provided terrifying insights into human military engineering. Their weapons were designed not just to destroy enemies, but to function reliably under conditions that would cripple the technology of other species. Human military doctrine assumed their equipment would be damaged, their supply lines cut, and their forces outnumbered. Yet they continued to develop tactics for winning under these impossible circumstances. They have turned every disadvantage into a weapon, Vextal observed, studying the tactical analyses. Numerical inferiority becomes mobility advantage, technological limitations become unpredictability, and isolation becomes motivation for desperate tactics. The most disturbing aspect is their approach to warfare itself, Dr. Nethera continued. They do not fight for rational objectives like territory or resources. They fight for abstract concepts like honor, freedom, and revenge. These are enemies who cannot be negotiated with because their motivations transcend material concerns. The psychological profiles revealed beings who would choose mutual destruction over surrender, who viewed death in combat as preferable to life under foreign rule, and who measured victory not by what they gained, but by how much damage they inflicted on their enemies. The concept of acceptable losses was meaningless to humans when applied to principles they valued. "Commander?" Zithara called urgently from her station. "The human vessel has changed course again. They are moving directly toward our position at maximum acceleration." The main screen shifted to show the USS Defiance burning through space with reckless speed, its primitive fusion drives pushed beyond safe operational limits. Captain Jake Morrison was apparently unconcerned about the possibility of engine failure or system overload in his eagerness to make contact. "They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies," Zithara reported. "The transmissions appear to be peaceful greetings and requests for communication." Dr. Nethera's tentacles curled in terror as she processed this development. "Commander, this may be the most dangerous moment in Zelkari history. If we establish communication with the humans, they will likely attempt to pack bond with our crew. Once that happens, any threat to the Zelkari Empire becomes a personal attack on their adopted family." The implications were staggering. Contact with humanity might provide the Zelkari with powerful protectors, but it would also make them complicit in human expansion across the galaxy. Every enemy the humans made would become an enemy of anyone they had adopted into their pack structure. "What are our options?" Vextal asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "We can attempt to withdraw before they achieve sensor lock on our position," Dr. Nethera replied. "Or we can make contact and hope that human pack bonding behavior works in our favor, rather than making us accessories to galactic conquest." The choice before them was impossible. Retreat might delay the inevitable, but would leave the Zelkari unprepared for future encounters with human expansion. Contact might provide protection, but could transform the peaceful Zelkari into participants in humanity's violent approach to interstellar relations. "Commander," Zithara reported with growing alarm, "they have achieved sensor lock. Captain Morrison is transmitting personal greetings and expressing curiosity about our species and culture." The translated communications revealed typical human behavior patterns. Morrison was not following any established first contact protocols because humanity had never encountered alien intelligence before. He was making decisions based on human instincts and human social expectations, treating the situation as an opportunity to make new friends rather than a delicate diplomatic encounter between civilizations. "They want to be our friends," Dr. Nethera said, her voice heavy with dread. "And for humans, friendship means unlimited loyalty and protection backed by their entire military capability." Vextal realized that the galaxy stood at a crossroads. The peaceful order that had existed for thousands of years was about to encounter a species that treated warfare as a form of social bonding and violence as an expression of love. The humans would not conquer the galaxy through superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They would adopt it one species at a time until every intelligent being in the galaxy became part of their ever-expanding family. "What is your recommendation, Doctor?" "We are about to witness the end of galactic civilization as we know it," she replied. "The only question is whether we will be consumed by the chaos or become part of it." The USS Defiance continued its approach, broadcasting messages of friendship and peace in the universal language of mathematics. Captain Morrison and his crew were genuinely excited about making first contact with alien intelligence, completely unaware that their very existence represented an existential threat to every established power in the galaxy. The harmony of minds hung motionless in space as its crew faced the most important decision in galactic history. In a few hours, they would either flee from humanity and spend the rest of their lives preparing for inevitable conflict, or they would become the first alien species to discover what it meant to be adopted by the most dangerous family in the universe. The age of peaceful coexistence was ending, and the age of human expansion was about to begin.